Like, no, not going to do it. Okay, here we go. And Miss Fanta asked which post office. The airport post office is going to be open from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Sunday, December 20th for package pickup only. I was just sharing that. I thought that was super nice of them. So today is December 17th. It's a Thursday. A couple exciting things happened today because Dr. Nace is here with us again today. And today she got her COVID vaccine. Okay, Dr. Nace, how do you feel?
Oh, I feel just fine. Do I look any different? Can you tell?
Nope, I can't.
My eyes?
Nope, you look the same. You look the same. So that's awesome. And so today our topic is going to be how effective is the vaccine? When will it be available? And then maybe even how might one make a decision to get the vaccine? How would you choose to get the vaccine? So do you want to start with slides, Dr. Nace?
I'll go ahead and start with the effective. So we'll talk about that part because that's some supportive information about the vaccine itself. So this was a significant question before they had done the trials and done the phase studies on vaccine. There's a question about how effective is a vaccine going to be? And the government FDA part of it said if it can be at least 50 to 60% effective, not dissimilar to what the flu is. So the flu vaccine is about, depending on the year, about 50 or 60% effective, but because it mutates year to year and has to keep changing, that percentage will change. That they would, if it was at least 50 or 60, that would be considered successful and then would be produced down the road. So when we got the initial results and the supportive results that it was between 94 to 95% effective from two separate companies with very similar numbers, Pfizer's was right at 95% and Moderna at 94.5% effective. That was an amazing discovery. And it also just said, you know what, this is a light at the end of the tunnel. We have a vaccine that is incredibly effective. So then another question that follows up, okay, if this vaccine, given how easily it spreads, but given that the vaccine is 94 to 95% effective, how many people are we going to have to vaccinate to get that, what people will hear as herd immunity? Mm-hmm. And that's where there's enough people in the community that in the world that are vaccinated, that is very difficult for it to spread to someone else. And when can we start to get that? Not that it's eradicated, but that just you have that herd immunity. And the exact number isn't known, but it's about anywhere from 60 to 80% of the population would have to get vaccinated to bring that number way down to that herd immunity number. Now, that doesn't mean that if we only get 40% or 50%, that it's not going to have an impact. It will still have an impact. But the more people that get vaccinated in our community and in our world are going to lead towards less transmission of this virus. So that is a goal. Now, one of the challenges of that goal is currently the vaccine is not approved for those under age 16. And that's a good section of our population that we can't yet address or vaccinate. So that means a whole lot of people 16 and older at this point, we need to get vaccinated. And as I talked about yesterday, this approval of this vaccine for this emergency use, we don't know exactly how long that you will be immune. We anticipate it's going to not be similar to flu because it doesn't mutate like the flu virus has been seen, but we don't know how long it's going to last. And we don't know how long, if you actually had COVID, how long your immunity of having the disease is. We know it's about, we know at least 90 days, mm-hmm. but we don't know how much longer it goes after that. Mm-hmm. So, but we do know that if you get vaccinated, you're not only protecting yourself, you're protecting those around you and those around you who aren't eligible to get that vaccine, which would be those kids, those people with certain medical conditions that might not be able to get it. And it is definitely the strongest tool we have to help get this pandemic under control. Go ahead and go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So then the question also becomes, when will this be available? Mm-hmm. So as you know, as I got the vaccine today, it was delivered to Alaska just this week. That's the Pfizer one that was approved last week on December 10th. This week, today, Moderna is going for that same emergency use approval from the FDA today, and then more vaccine would be able to ship to all over. So when the FDA approves this and this emergency use, then they rely also on the CDC and a subgroup of the CDC, which is called the ACIP, or the Advisory Committee on Immunizations, to help us understand and figure out and give guidelines to who should get the vaccine in what order. The goal is absolutely to make it available to everyone. But because of the limited amount, what they're doing is kind of doing it in different tiers, and everybody wants to know, what tier am I in? And we don't actually know the details past this first part, which is front care health workers who are seeing COVID on a regular basis, as well as long-term care facility residents and people who work there, and extending it out to those who might work in terms of health aides and police, that kind of thing, who have that direct contact. We don't know the order in which after that it's going to happen, but we will get guidance on that. We just don't have it right now, as we didn't know the exact number that we're going to get, and we didn't know about Moderna yet. Is that going to go through? How many doses will we get? So those are decisions that are still to be made. So if you go ahead and go to the next slide. Yep. This just kind of shows where are we and what's going to happen. So when I first was starting these lectures, we were on the yellow era, which is no vaccine, and that federal was giving their guidelines down to the state, down to the local levels, trying to figure out where. Now we are very limited availability. So in Fairbanks, immunization started this morning. So, and that's what I participated in, being a frontline worker at the hospital. That's what we started to see today, and just working them through, following the guidelines, watching for any kind of reactions, and making sure all is safe. And that's safe and underway today.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so part of our mission statement here at West Valley is all about critical thinking, right? That we know that helping students develop critical thinking is so important. And to me, part of that is getting information so that you can make informed decisions for you. So that's part of why I'm very excited that we're doing this. So how did you choose, Dr. Nace, that you wanted to get this vaccine? What made it important for you?
So I can look at the science of it, and I can know, of course, there is that little element of a risk with the vaccine, because we don't know that longer term adverse events. Could those be out there? But like I stated yesterday, in the history of vaccine, it is between 6 and 8 weeks that you might see those adverse events. That is the general kind of scene, as well as when you look at the mechanics of how messenger RNA works, that science part of it says, also in seeing people who've had COVID-19 and watching and hearing about the morbidity and mortality, so the illness and the death rates, that to me said, oh, I'd rather go this other route. So one of the comparisons that I used is, so Dr. Ann Zink has sometimes referred to this COVID experience as a wild ride adventure. And when I think about it, I kind of compare it for myself to a computer adventure game, where I choose my own adventure path to overcome this evil virus at the end, right? So I have the opportunity to choose to go on this wild ride, take a chance, and get exposed to this virus. But the problem is, I don't know which path it's going to lead me towards that virus. So there's just so many unknowns. So it could be the asymptomatic carrier. Well, I'm fine, and all I do is pass it on to other people unknowingly. Or I could go down the path where I get maybe a cold, symptoms, and just feel a little achy, just annoying, but totally doable. Or I could get that path that I'm short of breath and I might need hospital admission, or maybe I need a ventilator. But I have to find the ventilator in this game, because a whole lot of other people are playing the same game and they might have already got to the ventilators. Or I might get this path where I have like prolonged fatigue or maybe a sick heart, and deal with those outcomes. Or do I even get stopped before I have the opportunity to beat the virus? And then I'm like, or I could use a vaccine cheat. And this vaccine cheat that's backed by history, by ingenuity, and by science. I mean, I, for one, do not think that COVID has played fair in 2020. So I am more than willing to pull a fast one on COVID and go right to this science-backed cheat. And so I did.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think about it in a few ways too, right? I was talking to my mom, who had polio as a child and remembers very explicitly taking her kid. Well, not very explicitly, because she can't remember how many kids she had at the time, but that's, parenting. But she remembers taking her kids to go get the polio vaccine. And so, and I've always thought about it of that risk benefit piece, right? Is the risk, does the risk of not getting it outweigh the benefits that could come getting good? And full disclosure, I have had COVID and had one of those not very mild cases, felt very lucky, but I know what I was worried about the whole time was who I may have passed it on to unknowingly, because I didn't know I was a close contact, so I wasn't quarantining. And then when I did get symptomatic, I immediately started isolating. But I know I was very worried the whole time about who I may have unknowingly passed it on to and the potential, detriment to them that I wouldn't have known about. So I know for me, that's really important to me. And I'm outside of my 90 days now. Like I've gotten through that period and, that piece of not knowing, like, could I get it? Yeah. So I'm with you that, I know if I'm delayed in getting it because I've had it before, like that's totally okay. But I know for me and my family that'll be one step that we're happy to take to help support the community.
So the recommendation for people who have had COVID
Mhm.
is that if you're currently sick, symptomatic, or in your isolation, is to not get it at that point. But then the recommendation is to get the vaccine. Now, if you've had COVID in the last 90 days, then you might consider, oh, you know what, I'm going to wait to allow other people to get the vaccine. But they still encourage those who have had COVID to also get their vaccine.
Awesome. Okay. So we still don't know exactly what the future holds in terms of who will be next on the list or where it'll go. And I know that's a question. But thank you so much. I think this was really helpful. And here you are, you've gotten the vaccine.
I did.
And
right
now
here.
it's going to start doing its work in your body and delivering those. I love that idea of little instruction sheets, right, to your cells and whatnot. And then we're going to check in tomorrow again. And I put the link in there for submitting questions. I know we've had some staff and students submit questions. So we'll get to those questions and try to help flush anything else out that we can. Anything else that we were going to talk about today that I forgot?
I think we kind of hit the top lines. I felt when I went there, so they're doing it based out of the hospital right now, because of the requirements of keeping that vaccine cold and the limited time once you start to thaw that you can use it. So right now, that's our distribution center. And very interesting to learn about all the little bits about how they keep it cold and how they make sure it does stay cold, and they have a system, and so it's guaranteed. So those are interesting little bits we'll see what questions we have tomorrow and how things are going 24 hours from now.
Yeah. And we'll for sure talk about the second dose part of it too, because we didn't talk about that today too. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nace. You have a great day today.
I will.
Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
You're welcome. All right. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.